It was late October on a Saturday during Halloween weekend. I think Halloween fell on a Tuesday that year, so the big party night was the Saturday before. My friends and I were still looking for last-minute plans since everything was sold out. Ideally, we wanted to find a house party. We all had pretty funny costumes and wanted to get good use out of them. My friend Kate actually decided to put on her Instagram and Snapchat stories that we were looking for parties that night. It wasn't something I would have ever done. I'd find that kind of shameless and embarrassing, but I was glad she was willing to do it. I was surprised when she texted our group chat that someone had hit her up about a party pretty soon after posting. She sent a screenshot of the details in the group chat. It had an address, start time, and a few ground rules. The party would only be indoors with no backyard access, bring your own booze, and you must bring at least one girl for every guy. The guy who sent Kate the details was supposedly one of our guy friends around our age who mutually knew a lot of the same people we did. Apparently, several people we knew were going to this party. The house address was one town over, but super close to us. Between the four of us girls, we all went to Shauna's house since she had an open place where we could pregame. We spent about an hour there finishing up getting ready. We waited until our guy friends confirmed they were going, then decided to head over. We called an Uber, and we all had our own drinks, everything from Four Locos to White Claws to vodka shooters. The Uber driver was probably sick of us by the end of the drive. When we got to the house, we saw cars parked everywhere. The house was pretty big, with a very spacious front yard. We were four girls walking in, so surely whoever was throwing this party was going to love us. We didn't hear any music until we got closer to the door. Then we heard the beating of the bass. I opened the door, and the first room was a cross between the living room and kitchen. The entire house was very dimly lit, only by a bunch of orange lights hung up, definitely creating a Halloween party ambiance. The place was decently crowded, but honestly, we didn't know anyone there. Kate texted the guys we knew to see if they were there yet. In the meantime, some older guy came and greeted us. He asked our names and said he was John, Luke's dad. Apparently, Luke was the guy throwing this party. I asked who Luke was and where he went to school. He replied, "Oh, he's around here somewhere. You can ask him when you see him." Then he asked if we wanted to put our drinks in the cooler. He led us into the kitchen where there were 3 big coolers of ice, each one already filled with drinks, so we put some of our cans in the coolers. This John guy seemed like he was in his 50s, which would make sense if his son was throwing the party, but at the same time, it seemed slightly weird that he'd be so welcoming and involved in such a big party in his own house. He was going around talking to everybody. Well, it seemed mostly to the girls. He seemed like he could have been drunk too. The 4 of us played beer pong at one of the tables where some guys started talking to us. Kate then said our guy friends were on the way, which I was happy to hear. John suddenly yelled by and Kate's names from over by the counter in the kitchen. He was yelling shots. My other 2 friends, Shauna and Tracy, looked slightly offended, so I said, "Can we all have one?" He yelled, "Yeah, sure." So we went over to the kitchen counter and all took a shot of tequila. I gagged because there was no lime. I was definitely starting to get drunk after this. It was odd how much the dad of the house was trying to hype this party up. He had this oddly welcoming yet unsettling presence. Unsettling because he was much older than the generally college-aged people there, and he was pushing drinks on people. Then he asked what our poison was. I wasn't going to say anything until the girls all gave their favorite drinks. John started making a bunch of mixed drinks. In the meantime, we went back to the beer pong table where the guys we'd been playing were still waiting. I plugged my phone into an outlet because I was down to about 50% battery. Then I went back to the game. Mid-game, John came over with 2 drinks for Kate and me, then came back with 2 more for Shauna and Tracy. They were all in red Solo cups. He'd made me a vodka soda, and I sipped on it during our beer pong game whenever I had a chance. I was drinking it slowly because I was already drunk. After we lost to the random guys, I went to get my phone only to realize it hadn't charged at all. It was still at the same percentage. The outlet wasn't working. I didn't feel comfortable leaving my phone at any other outlets, so I just tried not to kill the battery any further. Our guy friends eventually showed up, and it was soon after this point that things quickly became a blur. I mean, very quickly. Like 1 second I remember talking with our friend Jeff, and the next thing I knew, I was blacked out. The next thing I remembered was my friends waking me up in the car outside my house. I felt woozy, my vision was blurred, and my head was spinning. We were in one of our guy friends' cars. One of the guys walked me to my front door and helped me inside, then they all left. I was alone except for my parents sleeping in their room. I felt like I must have drunk way too much, but I also had this weird woozy feeling in my head that I'd never experienced from drinking before. I felt dizzy and went straight to my room to bed. I checked my phone and had some texts from a random unsaved number. I opened them and there was already a bunch of messages. It started with me texting my name, and then they responded to John. Uh-oh. After that he said, "You look so cute." Based on the time he sent this, it was still during the party. There was a 2-hour gap from then until he texted me again saying, "Where did my favorite girls go?" I was shocked at myself for giving that man my number. I must have been drunker than I thought. Regardless, I put my head on the pillow and fell asleep instantly. The next morning, I woke up to some disturbing texts while my head was still spinning. I read these sickening messages that had come after I fell asleep. John had texted, "Where are you? I'm coming to your house. You left something here," followed by, "I'm here. Can you come to the door?" And then, "Hello, are you awake?" He'd also tried calling me 3 times. This was all around 2 a.m. I sent the screenshots to my friends, and that's when they reminded me of what had happened. John had been all over me as I was increasingly becoming like a zombie. My friends had started to get concerned, so they pulled me away and we left the party. Just as we were leaving, 2 police cars showed up outside, presumably for a noise complaint. As we left, everyone took note of there being no furniture in the house. It was just a big empty space filled with people and beer pong tables. One of my guy friends looked up the number somehow and told me it was a voice over IP number, which I didn't understand, so he just said it was a fake phone number that John had texted me from. He also said that with my number, John could easily find my address. I felt even sicker now. I asked if anyone had ever met his alleged son, and everyone said no. We were starting to think there was no son. When Shauna suggested he might have roofied me, it made so much sense. I'd never felt the way I was feeling before. We decided to take this to the police. We all went to the nearest police station and reported everything, including the texts. The cop at the front desk asked if this was in relation to the house party in the vacant house the night before. We were confused by him saying vacant house until he explained that there had been a call from neighbors about a party going on in a house that had been vacant for some time. We all looked at each other with our mouths gaping. We were all brought into an office to sit down with a detective to tell the whole story. He took the fake phone number and said they'd try to trace it back to somebody once they got a warrant. We gave the police everything we could and went on our way. I blocked the fake number. I honestly felt sick over this for a while. As the days went on and nothing happened, I was confident it was over, but none of us ever heard back from the police. We never heard of any arrests being made or anything. To think that man went out of his way to advertise a house party in a vacant house just to have access to young women, roofied me and possibly other girls, and lied about having a son, all of this was clearly the work of a very, very dangerous man. The fact that we still haven't been called in to identify anybody scares me to think he's still roaming free. This was a month ago. I'll update if things change, and I'm crossing my fingers that they do.
It was Halloween night 2016, and I was tasked by my parents to hand out candy to all the kids for the day. My mom had bought what felt like 1,000,000 bags of candy that I knew we'd have left over for weeks. I'd be the one, unfortunately, munching on them for days, if not weeks, which was frustrating since I was trying to lose weight at the time. I always told my mom she went way overboard with the candy. Our house was in a cul-de-sac on a dead end, so we hardly got any trick-or-treaters usually. However, we did have some loyal kids who'd always come to our house knowing how generous we were with candy. Halloween fell on a Monday this year, and I was in college with Mondays and Wednesdays off that semester. I spent the first half of the day at the gym and then worked on assignments for class. Around 4 p.m., the sound of kids outside indicated that trick-or-treaters were starting their rounds. The first doorbell rang somewhere between 4 and 5 p.m. The day went exactly as you'd expect. Nothing particularly interesting about handing out candy to little kids all day, with my dog Vito barking like crazy every time the doorbell rang. From the first trick-or-treater until 8 p.m., I'd say there were maybe 10 to 15 total visitors. As I mentioned, our cul-de-sac was out of the way, so it was more effective for trick-or-treaters to just pass it and keep going straight. Since it was a Monday night, things quieted down much earlier than usual. I felt like I'd gotten enough homework done and made a good dent in my projects, so I had some of my mom's leftover stew and went to my room to watch Game of Thrones. I was literally 2 episodes in when I heard the unexpected sound of the doorbell. Vito started barking again. I looked at the clock. It had to be around 9:30. This was definitely beyond the cutoff time for trick-or-treaters. I went downstairs to the front door and opened it. On the other side of the glass storm door was a very tall man in a clown costume with an extremely scary-looking mask. I knew it was a man just based on the frame of the person. He was alone. He waved at me and then pointed at the brown sack he was holding, which looked basically empty. I didn't open the storm door. I just said through it, "Sorry, we don't have any more candy," and slammed the door shut. I locked it right away. I instantly regretted opening the door. I genuinely thought it was just some kid, or maybe an unfortunate parent who worked late and wanted to get in some last-minute trick-or-treating with their children. But whoever I'd just seen on our doorstep was definitely not a kid. Hell, it didn't even look like a teenager. The frame of this person was massive, and the clown costume just made him look even bigger. Thankfully, I hadn't grabbed the candy bag before opening the door, so he couldn't see that I was lying about not having any more candy. I hovered by the door for a bit, listening to see if I'd hear him walking away. But not only did I not hear him leave, he rang the doorbell again. Vito started going ballistic again. Vito is a rat terrier, so his bark isn't intimidating, and he'd never actually defend the home from an intruder. I picked him up and carried him upstairs after turning all the lights off downstairs. This was my half-hearted attempt at making the guy think I was absolutely never opening that door again tonight. I put Vito in my room and shut the door so he wouldn't keep barking. I stood at the top of the stairs listening, and then I heard the storm door being forced open through the front door. There was a loud snap, implying that the latch may have been broken from force. Then I heard knocking on the front door and the door handle being rattled. At this point, I decided to hide in my room. I was incredibly unsettled. I texted my family group chat about what was going on, but no one answered. I knew that whoever this was had to get bored eventually. I would have texted all my guy friends asking if they knew who it was, but all my guy friends are short, so this definitely wasn't a prank from them. I resumed the episode I was watching, truly just trying to pretend he wasn't there. What else was I supposed to do? But then the doorbell rang once again. This was turning into a nightmare. I kept telling Vito to shush, and I had my blinds closed because I didn't want that clown knowing what room I was in. I tried calling my dad, but he didn't pick up. I called my brother, who answered but said he wasn't alone. I knew that meant he was with a girl. I told him to check my texts because there was some guy dressed as a clown at the door who wouldn't go away. He said it was probably just a Halloween prank and to ignore it. He seemed like he was in a hurry to get off the phone, so I hung up. I hoped he was right. It honestly made the most sense for it to be a prank. After a few more minutes of sitting on the edge of my bed anxiously, the doorbell didn't ring again. I finally felt safe enough to relax and lay back down. I started drifting off slowly, so I turned the TV off to allow complete silence and darkness in the room. Very shortly after that, I drifted off to sleep. I don't think I was asleep long enough to enter REM sleep and have a dream when I woke up to Vito growling and quietly barking, the way he would when he was waiting for approval from one of us. I told him to be quiet, and he stopped. I looked to see what he was looking at. He was staring at the window. I listened carefully. There was a sound coming from right outside the window, the slightest thumping sounds, and I could almost swear I heard something rubbing against the window. My bedroom was on the second floor of the house, so it shouldn't have been possible for anyone to be outside my window. But I wondered what it could be. I got up and pushed open the blind on my window, and boy was I wrong. That man dressed as a clown was at my window. All I could see was that horrific mask on the other side of the glass. He tilted his head as he looked at me. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Vito didn't even bark from what I remember, or maybe I just blocked everything else out. I ran with my phone out of my room into my parents' bedroom, where I locked the door and dialed 911. I was too shaken to even cry. My whole body was shaking and my voice was trembling as I spoke to the 911 operator. I must have asked the operator once every 20 seconds to get the police to hurry up. She told me the same thing every time: they're coming as fast as they can. The police got to the house in roughly 10 minutes. They examined the exterior of the house looking for any attempted entry points. All they found was that the latch on the front storm door was broken, like I'd figured, and leaning against the side of the house by my bedroom window was my dad's ladder. That man had gone into our storage shed outside and found my dad's ladder to use to climb up to my window. To avoid this going any further, I went to sleep at my guy friend Adam's house that night. To this day, I don't know if this was just a sick prank purposely played on Halloween, or if there was about to be a horrible crime committed with the twisted novelty of it being Halloween.
This is a disturbing memory from when I was just 7 or 8 years old. Usually, my mom would take my brother and me trick-or-treating, but this particular year was different. After school, she dropped me off at my friend Sean's house instead. The plan was for Sean, our friend Johnny, and me to go together. Both Johnny and Sean were a year older than me, and we'd met while I was playing with my brother on our block. Sean had a strange home situation that I never really understood as a kid. His sister was about 20 years old. There was this huge age gap between them, and she seemed to be his main caretaker. Whenever I visited their house, it always smelled like cats, and his sister constantly had different guys over. She was always cold toward me, never acknowledging me or even saying hello. Sean's dad was completely out of the picture, and I think his mom was always working out of town. I only met her a few times during our friendship. When my mom dropped me off, she expected that Sean's mom would be supervising our trick-or-treating. After saying goodbye, I went inside where Johnny was already waiting. We all had these big pillowcases ready to fill with candy. That's when I learned that neither Sean's mom nor his sister would be coming with us. Being so young, I felt uncomfortable knowing that Johnny and Sean would be leading the way unsupervised, but at the same time, there was this exciting sense of freedom. I knew for certain my mom wouldn't have approved of us going out alone like this. Eventually, we headed out into the neighborhood to make our rounds. Quite a few people asked if we were alone or where our parents were. Johnny always had the same ready lie: "My mom is up ahead with my sister." It worked every time. Since it was a Friday, we didn't start trick-or-treating until around 5 p.m., but we didn't have school the next day, so we planned to keep going until our pillowcases were completely full. After a couple of hours, we took a break at Sean's house, where he heated up some frozen pizzas. At the time, I was jealous of the apparent freedom he had, no parents caring about what he did. Looking back now, though, I count myself incredibly blessed to have grown up with 2 strict parents who cared. We spent about an hour watching Halloween specials on Nickelodeon while eating pizza and candy. Johnny's mom eventually picked him up, but Sean and I wanted to keep going, so we headed back out for round 2. It was dark now, probably past 8 p.m., and there were far fewer trick-or-treaters around. We tried hitting blocks we hadn't visited yet, which meant straying further from Sean's house. Some houses didn't answer at this late hour, and most people who did had comments about us being alone or how late it was getting. That's when we noticed a man pushing a stroller a couple of houses behind us. He was walking very slowly in our direction, probably a dad trick-or-treating with his young child, we thought. As we continued going door to door, he got closer and closer. Eventually, we could hear him making soft shh sounds and singing quietly. When he finally caught up to us, he said, "How's the trick-or-treating going, boys?" "Good," we replied at the same time. "It's pretty late. I'm on my way back to my house. I can give you guys the rest of my candy." Sean and I looked at each other with excited expressions, like we'd just hit the jackpot.
Sean asked what kind of candies he had, and the man said he had bags of different things. He explained that he didn't get to give much away because he'd wanted to take his daughter out for a trick-or-treat stroll. He did have a bag hanging on one of the stroller handles filled with some candy. The stroller was completely covered by a folding canopy on top, so we couldn't see his daughter. He said she was asleep and he didn't want to wake her up. Then he pointed ahead and said his house was just up that way, so we followed behind him as he pushed the stroller. He walked a little faster now, and as we went, I realized there was practically no one else out at this point, even though it was a Friday night. It seemed like we were in a quieter part of the neighborhood. The man made conversation as we walked, asking basic questions about what part of the neighborhood we were from and where we went to school. I let Sean answer most of the questions since, even though he was only a year older, I felt like he should take the lead. Several times as we walked, the man would lean into the stroller and talk in a high-pitched voice to his daughter, then turn back and smile at us. We finally made it to his house. He led us up the walkway with the stroller and unlocked his door. After opening it, he brought the stroller with his daughter inside first and then invited us to come in. Sean led the way, so I followed. I was the one who asked if we could leave the door open. He paused and then said, "Yeah, of course." He said he'd be right back as he went to get the candy bags, and he pushed the stroller into the living room, only about 10 feet away from where we were standing. I nudged Sean because I felt uncomfortable. I whispered, "Why would he leave the candy so far away?" Sean didn't respond. Instead, he turned toward the living room and walked up to the stroller. He lifted up the folding part that was covering the baby, and he looked disturbed. He hurried back to me, whispering, "Let's go," and started running once we got outside. I followed behind, which was tough because we had those heavy pillowcases. I was still confused about what he'd seen. Just then, we heard a woman's voice, "Y'all, excuse me." It was one of the man's neighbors. She ran over to us and asked if we knew that man. That's when Sean spilled everything, saying the man had offered us his leftover candy, but was pushing a stroller with a fake baby in it. I remember getting goosebumps as he said that. The woman said, "Yeah, that man doesn't have a child. I saw you walking with him." She took us to her car and drove each of us home. I know getting into a stranger's car after that was another questionable move, but we were just kids. The woman came to my front door to talk to my mom about what we just told her. My mom was absolutely distraught after I told her every last detail about the night. She sent me to my room while my parents called the police on that man. My parents never told me what happened after that. I believe they wanted to shelter me from any more exposure to the situation. My mom didn't want me going over to Sean's house anymore, and I know she had quite a bit to say to Sean's mom. I did see Sean at school occasionally after that, and we remained cordial, but our friendship was never the same after that night.